What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So today we are going to talk through exactly what your summer body protocol needs to look like. So I always like to do one of these videos. We start to approach the summer, we go into spring, and people start to give more of a shit about how they actually want to look this summer, and they start to really want to take some action behind making some positive changes. So you don't go to the beach this summer and feel like crap and not want to take your top off and have another summer of zero confidence. So that is not what I want for you. So in today's video, I'm going to explain to you essentially what's actually important and what you really need to focus on when it comes to losing fat and getting in great shape for the summer, and the stuff that's like kind of has some importance, but it's not that important, right? So the stuff that can make a bit of a difference, but it's not something you need to stress too much about. So you can kind of like pick and choose what maybe some of these things that aren't the most important, but you could potentially do if you kind of wanted better results. So this is going to make a little bit of sense anyway when I explain this. There's obviously like a few more things that I could have added, but I didn't want to make this like, you know, a little bit too complicated for you to understand, which is why I've only kind of picked, 5 and 5 each side. So let's get stuck into this. What we have got here is we have got the 5, I believe, non-negotiables that you need to do, right? There's no not doing it if you want to get great results. And then we've got the 5 added extras that, if you do these things, that they're gonna help for sure, but are they absolutely critical to getting results? No, probably not. So this is kind of like where we need to think about this. Now, what I've also done, I've highlighted at the bottom here as to why this is the most important thing. Now, if you cannot adhere to the approach that you are following, okay, you are not gonna be able to stick to it, you're not gonna be able to get results. This is the biggest problem that most people have, is that they don't follow a plan that they can stick to, so they never get the result, they never get the body that they want. Whereas if they stuck to it for long enough and they were patient and they followed a plan that maybe wasn't the most optimal, but it was actually fitted towards their lifestyle, is they would have stuck to it for long enough to still got the same result. So this is why the adherence is so important, that everybody can do these things here, okay? These are things that any single person, no matter how busy you are, you should be able to adhere to these things if you want to get in shape, if it's that serious. These things, this is maybe where we need to look into this a little bit more. So without any further ado, first and the most important thing when it comes to your fat loss protocol is these non-negotiables here. And this is eating in a calorie deficit, okay? Calorie deficit, you've probably heard of this a lot of times before. This is essentially making sure that you consume less calories than the amount of calories that you burn every day. You will not lose fat if you do not hit a calorie deficit, and it is as simple as that, okay? Most important thing. Now, how do we calculate this? Pretty easy. We would just go 10 to 12 calories per pound of your body weight. This is a very easy way to put you in a calorie deficit. Now, there is a lot of other calculations and things that you can do that will land you to a figure. You can go and do those. All we really want to do here is we just want to get a figure that we can start tracking, and then we can kind of adjust from there. Now, I typically just use this because I think it's very easy. If you want maybe a less harsh deficit, which is where I suggest most of you would start, go for like 12 calories per pound. So let's just say that, you're a 200-pound guy, that's roughly 2,400 calories per day, right? It's not too bad. That would be your first adjustment that you need to make. After that, we want to look at protein, okay? So protein is going to be 1 gram per pound of your body weight, right? So again, super simple. If you're a 200-pound guy, that's like 200 grams of protein that you should be consuming on a day-to-day basis. Now, if that seems like it's a lot and that seems a bit unrealistic and you feel like, geez, that's quite a lot of protein, just go for your goal weight, right? So your goal weight, let's say you're looking to get to 160 pounds, right? 40 pounds you want to lose. You would try and aim towards getting 160 grams of protein every day. Now, you should be able to do that. It's not that hard. You need to look at your nutrition and really try and dial that in. But this is roughly what you want to be aiming for. I would suggest you try and get as much protein in as possible because it fills you up. And ultimately, we want to be full on our diet because this is what's going to help us, again, adhere to the diet. So protein has got a lot of benefits, which is why it's so important. These are your 2 biggest, most important things when it comes to fat loss, okay? When it comes to nutrition, you just need to really nail these 2 things. Now, I could go into the whole food quality and whole food, all this kind of stuff. I'm not going to do that in this video. For now, I just want you to focus on these 2, right? Then we go into the third thing, and this is going to be your step count. This is more important than this cardio, which I'll get onto later in the video. Your steps are so important. There's so many guys that I work with now, and I don't even bother giving them cardio, even at any duration. I just give them a step target because this is what's going to actually burn more calories day to day. This is what we call our NEAT. non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So this is the type of exercise we do that it's not actually like we've gone and planned to go and do that exercise, if that makes sense, right? So going to the gym is a planned thing, whereas this is something that's unplanned. Now you could kind of say that, you know, do my steps fall into them being planned because I've gone for a walk? It's kind of another topic. It doesn't really matter. As long as you get your steps done and just make them part of your day, cool. And if you need to put them into your gym routine, also cool. Just go do some steps at the end of your workout. But you need to get the 10 to 12 in. Again, maybe start at 10 and slowly you want to push up to 12,000 per day. Then we go into the weights. Now this is not in any order of importance, by the way. This is just kind of however I've written it, but the weights would be 3 to 5 sessions per week. I would suggest, if you are a busy guy and you're watching this, do 3 sessions a week. I'm telling you now, that is enough to get incredible results. You will build the body of your dreams training 3 days a week using the right training approach, because the training is not that significant. I promise you now, yes, it's important. Yes, there's certain things you should be following, but it's kind of just like a rinse and repeat task. It doesn't need to be very complicated. So just pick a number that you can stick to. If you think you can do 4, do 4. I would say if I'm looking optimal amount of training that I think a guy should maybe try and stick to, that's going to get them the best results, I'd probably go slap bang in the middle. I think 4 is worth the trade-off to get the 4 sessions in. However, I still think that if you are busy, 3 sessions is enough. So just start with 3. When you build momentum, go to 4. And if you really love the gym and you can fit it in, possibly consider 5. I'd argue that you don't really need to do that, but of course, you know, you might enjoy the gym, you might have the time, it might be like a real release for you. You can do 5 sessions, that's cool. Then we go into the final step of our non-negotiables, and this is sleep, okay? This is the bit that everybody forgets. You are not going to lose the same amount of fat on low sleep than if you did on good quality amount of sleep. This has been shown in so many studies that people have literally studied someone sleep deprived versus someone who's well rested. And the difference in terms of the amount of weight they lost compared with like fat and muscle was massive. And it just goes to show that this is so important. 6 to 8 hours. Now I could have gone 7 to 9 hours, but I'm also realistic. You know, you're a busy guy watching this. Sometimes it might not be realistic to get up to 7. So just at least get 6 hours. That's at least where you need to be for your sleep to be able to really get the benefits from that, okay? Ideally, we want to go up to that more. Again, sleep we get, the more well rested we are, the more our testosterone is going to increase, and that's going to make us feel way better as guys, more motivation, more desire to train, to change. And again, all these things are going to increase your testosterone levels. So this is important. These are what you must do, okay? If you want to be in shape by the summer and you want to have a good physique and lose body fat, you are not going to miss any of these. Now we move on to what I call the added extras, right? So these are things that they're important for sure, but they aren't absolutely critical, but they will make a difference in some areas. So firstly, we go into cardio. Now, cardio is not essential, okay? It is not something that you have to do to lose weight and get results. You can literally lose fat from just being in a calorie deficit. That's it. Steps obviously will help with that as well. But if you want the quickest, or you know, you want to see the fastest amount of change, then do some cardio, okay? I do personally do cardio. I'm lucky that I have a treadmill here. Whenever I've kind of been in other places, I've always just done cardio on a daily. I like to run. So yeah, I do pretty much daily 20 to 30 minutes of cardio in some form. It seems like it's too much. Add on 20 to 30 minutes at the end of your sessions and do maybe it 3 to 4 days per week. I would focus on something that doesn't feel too intense. You don't want to literally like go all out on your cardio. Do something that, yes, it burns calories, you know, you get sweat on, but when you go so intense with your cardio, what this does is it just means that you want to eat the calories back. We get hungry and then it's very hard to then actually stay within our calorie deficit. So I wouldn't suggest that you really do intense cardio. I don't really suggest you do HIIT, to be honest. Never really used HIIT for clients that much. I would just literally focus on that 20 to 30 minutes, incline walk, stepper, cross trainer, rowing machine, and just do that on a daily, kind of when it suits you in terms of your schedule. Then we go into step number 2, right? Now, this is one that if you, again, really want the most optimal fat loss results, having carbs only pre and post workout, it could provide you with some benefits. Now, I don't really use this with that many of my clients because I don't want them to think carbs are bad. And to be honest, it doesn't make a massive difference. But, you know, really when we look at this, if we can obviously only use carbs pre and post workout so we can bring in insulin, that's gonna give us a better response from our training. We also more of an anabolic state our body falls into from essentially spiking up insulin pre-workout, and then post-workout again is that recovery window. That's going to be our most anabolic hormone. So essentially when it comes to like really trying to optimize, yes, the carbs pre and post, just pre and post is going to work. Now the reason why I say only pre and post is that ideally we want to kind of keep our body in a low insulin state throughout the day because this is when it's in its fat burning mode, whereas when we spike insulin up, it kind of shuts the doors to fat loss. So again, not going to massive difference. You have to remember that calories in, calories out, protein, still the most important thing. I don't use this technique for that many clients, but But if you are really wanting to push and get the best results possible, having carbs pre and post, and then just having protein and fats in other meals, it will make a bit of a difference. But as I say, maybe that's just not realistic, because if that then affects your adherence and you can't stick to it, well, there's literally no point. So I do sometimes use this strategy, like I'm using it right now because I'm just trying to get a little bit leaner at the moment. So I'm kind of just having my carbs pre and post, and then I'm having like very high fat, high protein meals during the other times. But as I say, this is not something that I would recommend to everyone. Then we go into step number 3, start looking into a bit more of the caffeine consumption. Now, caffeine is a thermogenic. It basically means that it will, increase the amount of calories that we burn day to day, right? Because it kind of increases our heart rate, jittery feelings when you take caffeine. But there is a way you can have caffeine. It can still be healthy, right? For a healthy adult, they say you can take up to 400 milligrams of caffeine per day. Again, like this is kind of depends on how you tolerate caffeine. I'm not saying you should do that, but what we've got to remember is that if we can increase our metabolism through caffeine, through burning more calories, this is going to add up throughout the week. So we could then end up burning like an extra few hundred calories, 1,000 calories from just having more caffeine. Our body's going to be in that thermogenic state where it's going to be burning a bit more fat. Realistically, what fat burners are, most fat burners just contain a shit ton of caffeine, and they just cause our body to, as I say, essentially almost up a little bit inside, burn more calories. We just have a higher, faster metabolism from caffeine consumption. So if you can tolerate caffeine, have maybe more. The key with caffeine is that we want to cut it off really around 12 o'clock. 2 o'clock, you can probably get away with it as well. It's got an 8-hour half-life. So we just want to make sure this is not done in the evening. But if you do want to use caffeine strategically, then yes, I would suggest having 200 to 400 milligrams of caffeine a day to help speed up your fat loss results. And it's also a very good appetite suppressant as well. So if you are fasting, ideally having caffeine again is going to help you prolong that fast. It's going to keep you energized. Caffeine, when you're fasted state, it's going to give you like a real good focus. Like when you've had a stim and you've not eaten, you really feel the sensitivity of that, which is good. So anyway, then we go into the 4th. Now, this is training your abs. The reason why I put this here is it's an added extra. Like, you don't need to train your abs to get a 6-pack. You have abs anyway. It's part of your body, right? But if you're like, cool, like I just want to see my abs pop the most, I want to be the most shredded, right? So maybe train abs 2 to 3 days a week and add that into your routine. I'm talking like, at the end of your workout, possibly then add some abs in there. And I'm going to focus on exercises that are actually difficult. So hanging leg raises, crunches using a rope, maybe like crunches on the machine, pull-outs are pretty good. Exercises that cause challenge. These are the ones that I would typically be doing when you're training your abs. I wouldn't be like messing around doing like, not even sit-ups to be honest, but certainly not loads of like, weird crunches and these like 10-minute ab workouts. Just do the stuff that actually challenges the muscles. That's what's going to cause growth. 2 to 3 days a week. You don't need to be training your abs every day. You don't really need to train them full stop, but if you want to, obviously then you can do that. And the final one, guys, is creatine. So this, again, like, there's no real drawback to taking creatine. I would essentially say everyone should take creatine because it's the most scientifically backed supplement. It helps you perform better in the gym, okay? It actually fuels our muscles more and increases the amount of creatine that our muscles have inside of them so we can perform better, we can get the extra rep out, we can push harder. And what does that do in return? Well, it's obviously going to help us build muscle, preserve muscle, get in better shape, just generally look better. Now, it's not going to essentially improve your rate of fat loss, but of course, if you're building more muscle, if you're able to perform better in the gym, that is kind of indirectly going to improve fat loss. There's also some benefits in creatine in terms of cognitive performance as well. So you actually like think a bit sharper, you can feel a bit better from creatine too. So I'd say there's no real downside to taking creatine, but it's not essential. Like it's not a non-negotiable that you should have, but I'm saying really any disadvantage to taking it, and it definitely works. So, you probably should take it. It's not expensive and it actually is a supplement that's completely safe. So I would probably do that. Now, anyway, guys, that is the summer body protocol, okay? These 5 things you must do, okay? Study these, make sure you're doing them, make sure they're a consistency for you, okay? These 5 things, possibly just look at a couple, pick and choose the ones that maybe you think that you can do, and then you can kind of add them into your routine, and then you have your plan, okay? And as I say, I'm going to go back to what I said at the start. Adherence is everything. So if you cannot stick to something, you need to change it. It has to be something you can stick with so that you get long-term results. That is the most important thing. That is why I have managed to stay in shape for the last 10 years. Keep the 6-pack, stay lean, stay shredded, because I enjoy it. I adhere to everything that I do. It feels natural to me. I enjoy the foods I eat. I enjoy my training. I like it. And that is essentially what creates longevity within your fitness routine. So as always, I hope you find this video useful. If you would like some extra one-to-one support, or even just to try and find out a bit more about how I might be able to help you personally, all these things into your routine to get the best results so that you don't actually have another summer kind of guessing and being very disappointed and dissatisfied with the way that you look. We've helped so many guys now get into amazing shape, so many women get into amazing shape. It's a proven process. So even if you just want to have a chat, see if it works and go from there, I'm going to leave a link in the description. You can book in your free strategy call with myself. We'll have a look at where you're at, where you need to get to, and we'll bridge the gap. But apart from that, guys, make sure you smash the like button, make sure you hit subscribe, and I will catch you in the next video.